Hello my gorgeous ones, welcome to Alicia Budget Beauty. My name is Alicia. Here on my channel I love all things affordable fashion and beauty. I do hauls, tutorials, reviews, palette recommendations, all sorts of fun stuff. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe, stick around, be a friend. All right, you guys, you've already seen the title or the thumbnail, and I have 45 palettes to show you guys that say spring to me. I started to realize when I was thinking about which palettes I was going to include, I thought, you know what? I think this might be my largest category. I think I just have a lot of spring looking palettes. So I have 45 to show you guys, and I actually could have had more, but I chose to leave some out that say more earthy to me. And I plan on doing a separate video kind of around Earth Day of all of my favorite earth tones palettes, so stay tuned for that. But if you want to see 45 spring leaning palettes, maybe so you can pull out your own that you have like these, maybe you have some of these yourself, or maybe you're looking for recommendations. If you want to see all 45, keep on watching. All right, you guys, so I'm going to start with what is on my eyes today. I have been wanting to pull this palette back out so badly, and when I set it out to include in this video, I was like, I'm putting this on my eyes. This is the What's Up Beauty Dragon Eye palette, and I just adore this palette so much. I honestly think this is my favorite time using it, and I've used it several times before. This is a palette I actually wore on Thanksgiving, even though it doesn't really necessarily look like a Thanksgiving palette. I was just dying to play with it back then, and I do think that you could wear it. A lot of these you can wear year round, but I think that this one really says spring, especially the greens in here. The quality is amazing. So if you have this one, you can definitely pull it out during spring. And then if not, I highly, highly recommend this palette. The quality is amazing. Next up, we have one from Nomad Cosmetics. This is the Fantasia palette. And here she looks inside. Now, I will say it is a little bit difficult to decide what is spring and what is summer for me. And some of these may repeat whenever I show you guys my summer palettes, but for me, I'm looking for either pastels, I'm looking for bright, I'm looking for, colors that you would find in flowers, but that aren't necessarily incredibly saturated and maybe not like neons. So for me, I think this could be spring or summer, honestly, but the kind of pastel nature to this says spring to me. I really, really enjoy this palette as well. The special shades in here are so, so good. The mattes are a little bit powdery, but I find that really helpful in the blending with this particular formula. Love, love, love Fantasia. Such a pretty palette. Next up, we have this adorable palette from Wicked Widow Beauty. This is the Tea Time palette. And to me, this is absolutely spring and summer, I would say too, but you have a little bit of a cooler tone to this pink that lends itself more spring than if this was like say like a neon pink or a magenta. But then the yellow, the blue, the green, I just think it's so cute. And I really love that Wicked Widow Beauty does these 8 pans because it makes them more affordable rather than the larger palettes when you have all the special shades and the prices get up there. Quality is great. This has become one of my favorite eyeshadow brands, and I think this one's so fun. I also love using this for a blush in the springtime, anytime. It's super pretty. This one is no longer available, but it is one of my favorite palettes. This is the Encanto palette from Alamar Cosmetics. So this came out obviously around the time Encanto, the Disney movie, came out, and this is definitely the best Alamar that I've tried. I had 2 other palettes that I did declutter of Alamar's, and this quality was just so much better. I really, really enjoy it. The color story is perfection to me. I mean, the movie really lends itself to creating a beautiful palette if you just use the colors that are in the film, which is what they did, and that was smart to stick to it. Then you're going to end up with a beautiful color story. Quality so good. I wish this was still available. I remember when they sold out, I kept just tagging and saying like, can't this be permanent? Because I kept recommending it, but no one could get their hands on it. Unfortunately, they didn't bring it back, but I'm hopeful that maybe one day they will, or that they will make another palette this good. All right, you guys, I debated putting this palette in here because this is brand new to me. I have not used it. I will have a separate video of the Petal Perfect collection from Profusion. They just sent it over and I unboxed it yesterday. And I'm gonna do a video. This is a big, big palette. So I don't know how many looks I will do with this because it's a lot. I may honestly only do 2 looks with it just to get the formula down and let you guys know if I would recommend it. But I think this is really, really pretty. If you see, if I get a little bit closer, you can see that some of the pans are these 3D flowers, which I think is really cool. This has lots of neutrals, lots of spring tones in here. I mean, they could have pared this down, I think, to maybe even like 24 pans. It would have been less overwhelming, but some people love these mega palettes. And I generally really like the Profusion quality. Every time I think, okay, maybe this one won't be as good, like the packaging may be cheaper and I'll think the quality's not gonna be that great. It always is. So stay tuned if you wanna see that. They also sent over a couple of cream blushes, some lip oil, some lashes. So that will be coming up soon. Okay, next up I have a Huda Beauty palette. This was from their Moorland series and the 2 palettes that came in that bundle were amazing. This is the Magic Dreaming palette and I kind of debated, I was like, is this spring enough? Like, what is it? And I was like, well, it's not really summer necessarily to me. I wouldn't say it's fall. I think this is kind of like a winter spring palette. Again, you can wear your palettes any time of the year, but the pastels in here, I was like, all right, yes, I could see myself wearing this in the spring. The quality is so good of these. They're very inexpensive. The packaging is just unreal. The way they did this whole thing was amazing. They had these little faux tickets in it, like you're going to a carnival. This brand continues to really blow it out of the water for me, and I still feel like they're a little bit underrated and very affordable. Next, we have this Unique Beauty palette. This is It's Giving Main Character. I've showed this brand quite a few times on my channel. It is a UK-based brand. She does hand make her shadows. This is a palette of all, I'm gonna blind myself and blind you guys, the reflection here. These are all special shades, so they are all very sparkly, very ethereal, very shifty. So this is, you know, kind of one of those companion palettes that I would pull out in the springtime. They're incredible, you guys. Like, so beautiful. And this is one, you know, if you have a neutral palette, if you have like an all matte palette, you can pull this out and make some really beautiful spring looks. Then we have this Tinkerbell palette from ColourPop, and I only have a few ColourPop palettes left. I've decluttered the rest, but this one I just can't let go because I love this color story. This is a really good formula from ColourPop, and I just love the tones of greens in here. I find them very wearable, very flattering, and I also love the kind of mauve tones in here as well. This is a beautiful spring palette. If you own it, don't forget about it. All right, next up I have this little palette from a little brand that I'm not sure, they still have a website, you can still order, but they have not been active on socials in about a year, so I'm not sure what's going on with it, but you can still order it. This is the Octius Luna palette, and that is the name of the brand, Octius Luna's Cosmetic. And this one came out around springtime last year. I did get it in PR and I really enjoyed it. I do think that it is a private label brand. This was her very first item. And then she also had some brushes and some lip, like a couple of lip products. Hasn't added anything since then. So I don't know if the launch was successful for her or not. But honestly, this is a really pretty palette and this screams spring to me. The yellows in here really draw me in. I loved my looks with this. So again, I don't know what's going on with the brand. I thought it was a really cute concept, but I wanted to include it. And then we have the Blooming Basket palette from Dede Signature. I ranked this as my #1 best palette for the month of February. It is so amazing, you guys. And I do see spring and summer in this palette for sure, but I also love that honestly you could wear this year round because you've got some deep tones in here. I could see these maybe during spooky season. I could see these in the winter time, but I do definitely see spring. The quality is freaking unreal with this. This palette surprised me to no end. The color story kind of confused me at first. I took a chance and purchased it and fell in love with it. Highly recommend this. It's also very affordable. The most affordable indie brand palette that I own, I believe. So love it, love it, love it, love it. Next, this one I was like, oh, is it summer? Is it spring? And some of these may also appear in my summer palettes, but this is the Tresluce I Am palette. This is Becky G's makeup line, and I think it's going through a rebranding. I don't know if the brand's closing altogether. I hope not, but they're doing something with the brand. But this palette is such a good palette. I was so excited when it came out. I bought it the moment it went live because I love Becky G, and I was blown away by the quality of this palette. Every time I use it, my looks are beautiful. The tones in here are awesome, like the green and the turquoise, the yellow, and then it's really a half and half neutral, half brights palette. And I can definitely see summer, I can see spring as well. So this will probably pop back up in my summer palettes. Next, we have the Melt Electric palette. So this palette right here, I believe, is super underrated. I have a couple of friends who agree with me. I know my girl Heather loves it. I have another friend on Instagram that is a big Melt lover, and she was like, that palette is underrated. I'm like, yes, it is. It kind of got trashed by some bigger creators when it came out, and I think that's like a hang up that they have, that they don't get it in PR, but Melt doesn't really do PR. So anyway, I digress. I thought this was a really nice palette. I love the color story. I need to use it more. I may actually put it to the side to use tomorrow because I'm dying to dip back into this palette. Next, we have the Nabla Secret palette. So I was like, all right, again, is this really spring? And I think that it is. It's very soft. It's very subtle. It's, you know, neutral, but you do have a couple of pops of color in here. I personally really enjoy this palette. I know it got a lot of hype when it came out, and then I know a lot of people ended up decluttering this later, and I actually didn't really understand why, because I think it's really nice quality. Nabla is a great brand. I just wish that they would come out with more and more often. I think people just kind of forget about them, but this is another one that I need to put to the side to wear soon. All right, I meant to have my brands together, you know, if I have multiple palettes by a brand. So I accidentally forgot to mention this Melt palette. This is the Mariposas y Amor palette, or Amor y Mariposas, and I love this palette. I adore it. I also think this palette was grossly underrated. I mean, every time I use it, it is just so beautiful and rich, and it blends like a dream. My eyes always stand out so much when I use it. I do think this is like a spring fall palette for sure, but I adore it. Love it so much. I'm so glad that I own it. Man, this was underrated. Okay, this Rose Quartz palette is another one that I see. It's funny how I see a lot of palettes as being spring and winter. I mean, as well as spring and summer, but I'll show you what I mean by this one. So I do see this as being such a wintry palette because it's kind of icy, but then it's also got these really soft kind of pastels in it as well. So I think it can definitely work for both. This, I think, will always be my favorite Huda palette. I don't know that it will ever be surpassed. I just adore all the different textures in here, the like shifts, the way it sparkles, and I love the mattes in here as well. It's such a beautiful palette. I mean, honestly, you could wear this year round. I think it'd be a beautiful wedding palette. I think I have this one in a video, a wedding palettes video that I filmed a long time ago, but I haven't posted yet. I think I have this one in there. All right, next up we have an Adept palette. This is the Arrow inspired palette, and this one is like spring on crack. This is so vibrant, so punchy, so magnetic. When you're wearing it, the shifts are insane. And then your mattes are all these kind of blue or green tones. One shows up a little bit bluish on me. But this is like when you want people to see you from across the room and announce that it's spring. It is fantastic. It is definitely one of my favorite Adept palettes. Love it so much. Okay, so I was like, do I include the Michaela palette from Glamlight? And I thought, no, that one says more summer to me. So spoiler, it'll probably show up in a summer palettes, but I decided this one, the Ice Cream Dream, is so much more spring to me because you do have a little bit more pastel leaning. You do have some bright, vibrant shades in here as well. Then of course some neutrals, but whereas the Michaela palette is a little bit more like saturation, you know, almost neon. This one is just a little bit more pastel. I think this one is so fun. I love the way that it blends. Honestly, Glamlite is such good quality, and they seem to be a brand right now that people either love or they have some sort of hang up about it, that they're against it, but I really enjoy it. I have to really like show restraint. I don't buy very many of their palettes because too many come out. If less came out, I would probably have more. I know that sounds weird, but it's sometimes when I see too much, I just buy none. Whereas if they didn't bring out so much, I probably would purchase more. So, but quality is amazing. I think this one is perfect for spring. All right, now we have 3 from Juvia's Place. So we have the Candy Shop, the Garden of Juvia's, and then we have the Magic Mini. Now, these 2 are my favorite out of the 3, but let me show you the Magic Mini. It's really fun though. I thought not too long ago, I thought I might declutter this. I always try to use a palette before I declutter it, unless I just know it's already been on the chopping block. And so I used it, and then I thought this is too pretty to declutter on the eyes. It just performs really well. You don't have a lot of mattes in here. It's mainly these shimmers, but they are really fun. I do see this as being a fun spring palette. But you guys, I adore these 2 palettes. So Garden of Juvia's might be one of my favorite pastel palettes, if not my favorite. These shimmers perform beautifully. Juvia's is one of those that it kind of varies palette to palette. They don't use the same formula across the board. So say the Afro Galactic palette, that one was incredible. The multi-chromes in there are nuts. The shimmers in here are these ultra sparkly, beautiful shimmers. This is a gorgeous Easter palette, perfect for spring. Love it, love it, love it. Then we have the Candy Shop palette. They had sent this over during, I did a Black Friday campaign for them, and I had missed that this palette existed, and I was so happy that they sent it because I was like, whoa, this is awesome. This is another one that I definitely see spring and summer in this, so it may appear again. The quality in here is so good. You do have a gorgeous, like, swirly shade in here that is so, so pretty. This quality is amazing. All right, another really, really fantastic pastel palette is the BH Cosmetics Lost in Los Angeles palette. BH is one that every time I revisit it, it's not as good as I remember it being. And I think that's just over the last, 3 years, I have tested, who knows, like hundreds of different formulas. And when I first found BH, I was like, this is the best ever. It's still really good, and it was really, really great for the price, but I just don't think it's as good as I used to think that it is. However, this is definitely one of my favorite palettes of theirs. It's so, so, so pretty. Definitely screams spring. And then I also have this 90s palette, the 90s Remix. So this is one that I also thought I might declutter, and then I used it and I was like, well, I do really like my look. So eventually I might still, it's one of those that I'm gonna have to use it again before I decide. But for now, I'm keeping it, and I do think that it also, this is it's got your neutrals right here, very, very smart color story. And then these punchy, pretty, pastel-y, and bright colors for spring. All right, now I've got 2 palettes from Blend Bunny Cosmetics. So let's start with Sickly Sweet. You guys, okay, maybe this is my favorite pastel palette. Maybe I take that back. I think I need to do a pastel ranking. Why did I say that? Why did I trap myself? Because that would be really, really hard. But I adore this one because it just is another palette that really, really surprised me. I won this palette in a giveaway from my dear friend Jen on Instagram. I had originally skipped it because I was like, I have plenty of pastel palettes. I don't need that. I didn't understand the dark shades in there, but the dark shades are what make the look so unique and interesting and inspiring. And I was like, why haven't I been mixing pastels and deeper, darker tones this whole time? This quality is great. I love this palette. I love it. Now that I have it out, I want to use it so bad. Next, we have the Dollhouse palette, and this one is a little bit less obvious, I think, as a spring palette. You do have tons of neutrals in here, but the colors that are in here that aren't neutrals, I think, say spring to me. This palette, this quality is excellent as well. This is one of those kind of everyday palettes. Honestly, you could use year round, but I just think if I had to say what season, my mind went blank, what season I would see first when I look at this, I would say spring. Okay, now we have the Profusion Ethereal palette. You guys, don't underestimate my Profusion. I'm telling you, this palette is so, so good. There is one shade in here, this delicate shade, this pink is stunning on the eyes. And then also this fluorescence has a shift. It's like a duo multi-chrome in here at a drugstore price. I wanna say this is only $14, somewhere around there. It is beautiful. And I love, like, even though it's, you know, kind of cheapy cardboard, I thought the packaging was really, really pretty for what it is with this. All right, next we have two palettes from Cosmic Brushes. We have the Serenity and the Muse palette. Now, the Serenity palette, I kept going back and forth. I was like, is this spring? Is it summer? I definitely see more spring in here, I think. This quality is so good for such an affordable price. This brand is definitely one to watch if you have not tried. I highly recommend. The only thing I don't like is they sell out way too quickly. I don't like that at all. Every palette sells out. And I think at this point, they have to know they just need to have more available. It creates a frenzy that I don't like, but the quality is outstanding. We have the Muse palette, which is like spring grunge. It's so pretty. So while I think this one is a little bit more, both of them kind of have this grungy element to it actually, but like this one is kind of more romance meets grunge, where this one's kind of like electric meets grunge meets spring. Okay, now we have a couple of Oden's Eye palettes, and honestly, I've kind of lost interest in Oden's Eye. I used to love them, but I think I have, the reason why I've lost interest is what I have, nothing that's came out since has, or nothing that's come out since, has appealed to me as much as what I already own. So we have the Alva 2 palette, which is such a beautiful kind of pastel-y rainbow palette with different textures in here. And then we have my personal favorite is the Soulmane 2. I adore this color story. I think it is so, so gorgeous. This is beautiful on the eyes. The blue tones in this, oh my gosh, they are so dreamy. I love it. It's gonna be hard to beat this palette. I also love the Giant Wools palette and the Hummingbird palette from that whole collection. Anything since, it just has fallen short for me. I have what I love already. So we'll see if they come out with something that catches my eye. All right, now I do have 3 Alter Ego palettes that I think say summer to me, and they are different from each other. So the most recent one that I have a video up and have 3 looks with it. That is the Dream Gaze palette. And this is a dupe for the Natasha Denona pastel palette that's no longer available. They also went back to magnetic pans in this, so you can rearrange it, but I think it's already arranged in a way that makes sense to me. So this, obviously, pastel, says spring. I liked my looks with this a lot. I had to work harder at them than I would in, say, the Juvia's pastel, or even like the Glamlight Ice Cream Dream palette, but this is only $22, and I do think that it's good for that, and I do like my looks. I think this is so good for those who are scared of too much pigment, even with pastels. And then we have the Midsummer and the Sakura palette. So these kind of say muted spring to me. So these are very minty and these cool tones. And then here you kind of have like spring, muted spring is what I see with these. And I actually really, really, really love my looks with these as well. These are 2 palettes that I thought I might declutter. I just was like, oh, I don't know if the color stories don't grab me, but they are so flattering on. I couldn't deny it that when I have these on my eyes, I'm like, why would I declutter? Like, these tones are so pretty. They're just not ones that me being someone who wants to be grabbed in, gravitate towards, but they are very beautiful on the eyes. Okay, next up we have this Utopian Dream palette from Pat McGrath, the Mothership. So I was like, which Pat McGrath Mothership actually says spring to me? None of them are like spring, because they're all much more kind of like neutrally with some rosy tones in it. But I think this one has the most spring elements to it. I really need to dedicate some time to getting back into my Motherships to make it worth it, the money worth it that I spent on them. I did not purchase any of mine at full price though. I purchased all of mine for around $70 to $80. That's still a lot to spend on a palette. I need to use mine more, but this one is really, it's hard for me to rank, and I promised that I would do a ranking like 2 years ago of these. I still have not done that, but Utopian Dream I think is my favorite, but sometimes I go back and forth, but I think this one does say spring the most. Then we have a Natasha Denona palette. We have the Zendo palette. I look at this one and I see fall and I see spring. This is fall. This kind of says spring mixed together. I think you could get some really beautiful spring looks out of this. I enjoy this palette. This one was kind of panned whenever it came out. People did not love it. Most people didn't. I really enjoy my looks with this palette. So I think Zendo is a great one for spring. Then we have 3 palettes from Gourmande Girls. So we have the Ethereal palette, which is the all special shades palette that again just says this is like Easter. It's like the Easter bunny just came and plopped down a sparkly nugget into a pan. I don't know where that came from, but it's just where my mind goes. This is such a gorgeous palette. I love these. They're so pretty. I find them very inspiring when it comes to springtime. It's just, it's so yummy. You do have to bring in another palette if you want, you know, dimension and mattes, but if you want just an all beautiful sparkly eye, you could do that with this as well. Now, I do think that Nightshade is a palette that can go kind of like spooky season, and then it's also very spring to me. So I adore this palette. It is one that on the eyes is undeniable. It is beautiful. You glow, especially if you use any of the yellows in here. I mean, honestly, the whole thing. You can go real deep, you can go brighter, you could go like day to night in springtime with this. I adore this palette. And then I have the brand new one, the Nueva Vida. This is the collab with Steph, my girl Steph's Beauty Stash. And honestly, I see spring and summer absolutely with this palette. I think it is a perfect balance between the two because you have some neons, but you kind of have some like pastel in here too. You can go light to deep. I adore this palette again. The quality is amazing. I still highly recommend that you get your hands on this one. Okay, guys, I'm almost out of breath. It is hard to do 45 palettes and try to keep it quick. All right, we have 3 from Simply Posh Cosmetics, and I think that they said that they're gonna start working on restocking some of these. They're ones that they come out with their palettes, and once they're gone, but I think that they're gonna bring some back out, and one of those being the Cozy Cabin palette. So I actually see both fall, winter, spring in here. I mean, if you're just looking at the bottom, it's very fall looking, but I see winter and spring in this top portion, absolutely. And the quality in this is great. They are, I think, coming back out with this closer to the holidays this year. So if you missed out, hopefully you can get it then. Then we have Fairy Tale Fairies, which is one of my absolute favorites by Simply Posh. This is a grungy pastel palette and it's beautiful. I love it. It has come apart right here, the glue. That's just a little side note. If it looks like it's not closing very well, but still, this palette is excellent. I love that you can move them around. But again, I think that the way that they arrange their palettes makes a lot of sense. And then we also have this Picking Peonies. Now, this one didn't get as much attention. It kind of disappeared. I haven't really seen that many people use it. I need to get this one back out and use it myself. I don't think that they'll relaunch this one. It doesn't have the magnetic pans, but I like this color story. It's kind of like a muted, subtle spring, kind of a grungy spring again, and I just adore this brand so much. All right, we have Candy Skies by Laura Lee. This was a collab with her niece, Erin, that she took under her wing. And this is such a fun little palette. It's pastels, but you do have some deeper tones in here too to deepen up the looks, which I really appreciate. This is another one that I need to use more. And I do have the Nudie Patootie palette. And I just think that this one was so fun for her. And I don't know if she's going to continue to do makeup or not and bring out palettes like this. I think she's kind of gone more towards lifestyle. I don't follow her as much anymore, but this palette was really fun. If you have it, I suggest bringing it out for spring. Then we have a Menagerie Cosmetics palette. So this is the Killer Purr palette, and it's a little play on that killer paws, killer purr with the lion on it. I originally was drawn to this because of the lions, because my middle son is like a lion in another lifetime. He loves lions. We predict that one day when he's older, his whole back will be like a lion tattoo. We'll see. But I was drawn to it for that. And then I also really love this color story. I think this is a very unique color story. I love the way that the pink pairs with like the mustardy yellow in here, and then you have a real earthy green. This is a fun palette. I love the quality of it. I highly recommend this one. I have the Indigo Ink palette. I have a whole palette of their singles, and I have yet to see another palette that really drew me in like this one. I think it is so pretty. Then we have by Sydney Grace and our dear Mel, the Tiny Marvels palette. And I just, this palette will always be so special to all of us that own it. And I just have always thought it's a beautiful spring palette. Anytime that, I always say this with Sydney Grace, if I need a look that I need to know that it's going to be flawless, that I don't have to think about it, I will pull out a Sydney Grace palette. I think they're really good for like portraits, if you have to get photos taken, like family photos or headshots or something. It's just one of those brands that looks really, really nice and professional on the eyes. And I think this one is so pretty. I wore this for our family photos last summer, I think, and it turned out really, really beautiful. All right, we are down to 4 palettes, you guys. We have the new palette that I got from Huda Beauty. This is the Trailblazer palette. It came in Ipsy, and I was like, do I put this in earthy? Do I put this in spring? And I thought the tones, I'm like, this is more like, I mean, it could go a little earthy, but I think this does say spring. I was blown away by this palette. I was ready to hate on it, not even gonna lie, because the last palette I got, I didn't really love it that much. This sucker is a gem. I did figure out the best way to use their mattes is a pack and then blend with a fluffy brush after to get it to blend out nicely. But the metallics in here, the green, I mean, you can just see how they shine. I was impressed. Okay, we are down to the last 3, which are all Nomad Cosmetics palettes. So we have the Fits de Provence, and I've already kind of done my rundown of these in my Nomad ranking video. If you missed it and you're interested, I ranked all 19 of my larger Nomad palettes. And I mentioned that one that people didn't really like this palette, but I really, really like it, especially the yellows in here. I think that they are gorgeous. I also love that you can do kind of like a day to night scenario with this palette. This is daytime, this goes into the night. I personally, maybe one of the only ones, but I really like that palette. Then we have the Tokyo palette. This is currently $19 and will be discontinued soon. So when they run out, they run out. But this is pastel with a little bit deeper tones in here as well to deepen up the eye. This one's really, really fun. I really do enjoy this one. And then the last one, you'll definitely see again in the summer palettes, but it is the Paradise Islands palette. And I just see both. It's got pastels in here and these like kind of cool tones, but then it also has, these bright tones with like the orange and the pink and a brighter green. So I see both spring and summer. I ranked this one, spoiler, as #1 for the Nomad ranking video because it's the whole thing. It's that it makes me think of summer. I'm a summer girl and I do really, really enjoy this color story. Wow, you guys, if you were with me at the end for 45 spring palettes, you must be very, very interested in spring. I'm so glad that it's here. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, have fun shopping, budget shopping. Bye.